It was one of the most powerful weapons ever built by human hands. A floating fortress of steel. A moving city of firepower. A war machine designed to dominate the sea. And then, it vanished. No explosion. No distress call. No survivors. No wreckage. Just silence. Soft ocean wind over darkness. Distant foghorn echo. Low, haunting music slowly rising. One moment, this battleship ruled the ocean. The next moment, it was gone as if it had never existed. Tonight, you're about to step inside one of the most disturbing unsolved mysteries in naval history. A story that still terrifies sailors. A case that continues to haunt military archives. A disappearance so complete that, even more than a century later, the ocean has refused to give up its secret. Because ships do not simply disappear. And battleships. Battleships definitely do not disappear. Cut to violent storm waves crashing in slow motion. Old black and white naval footage flickering. Hundreds of men vanished with that ship. Fathers. Sons. Brothers. Men who stood proudly on the deck in crisp uniforms. Men who waved goodbye from the rails as families watched from the docks below. Men who believed steel, training, and technology could protect them from anything the ocean could throw at them. But the ocean does not fear steel. It does not care about power. It does not care about flags. It does not respect rank. And sometimes, it does not even leave bodies behind. Brief silence. For decades, the official story was simple. Lost at sea. A tragic accident. A victim of nature. Just a few cold words in a government report. But behind closed doors, admirals whispered. Investigators argued. And classified files told a very different story. Subtle radio static creeps into the audio. Because search crews found nothing. No oil slicks spreading across the waves. No twisted steel rising from the deep. No lifeboats drifting on the surface. Not even a single helmet. Not even a single boot. It was as if something had reached up from the depths of the ocean and swallowed the battleship whole. Deep bass hit. This is not just a story about a lost ship. This is a story about fear. Fear that even the most powerful navy on Earth could lose one of its greatest war machines without warning. Fear that something exists in the ocean that human technology cannot fight. Fear that the truth, whatever it is, may be far more terrifying than any official explanation ever given. Slow camera glide through thick fog. And before we expose the classified evidence, before we analyze the impossible radar data, before we examine the final, mysterious transmission, you must first understand just how impossible this disappearance truly was. Because this ship was not weak. This ship was not outdated. This ship was a giant. Blueprint-style animation appears on screen. Built from tens of thousands of tons of hardened steel. Armed with massive naval cannons that could fire shells weighing more than a small car. Protected by armor thick enough to survive direct artillery strikes. This battleship was designed to fight entire enemy fleets and win. Its engines could push it through storms that would tear normal ships apart. Its communication systems were state-of-the-art for their time. Its crew was trained for disaster, combat, fire, flooding, and everything in between. This was not a ship that quietly slipped beneath the waves. This was a ship that should have gone down fighting. Gun turret slowly rotating in dramatic slow motion. And yet, on one dark mission, it vanished without a single recorded scream. Music turns darker. On the night of its disappearance, nothing seemed unusual at first. The crew followed routine procedures. The officers logged standard weather conditions. The radio operator sent out scheduled transmissions. Everything was normal. Until suddenly, the messages stopped. Radio click. Long burst of static. The battleship did not send a distress signal. It did not request assistance. It did not report enemy contact. It simply went silent. And once it went silent, it was never heard from again. Long pause. Think about that. In a world filled with patrol ships, naval bases, radio towers, and maritime traffic, a massive battleship vanished without leaving behind even a whisper of its fate. That is what makes this story so terrifying. Not just the storm. Not just the war. Not just the theories. The silence. Fade to black for 1 second. Search operations began almost immediately. Dozens of ships were dispatched to the last known location. Aircraft flew overhead in tight formation, scanning mile after mile of empty water. Lookouts searched the surface with binoculars until their eyes burned. Days passed. Then weeks. Still, nothing. No floating debris. No broken hull. No bodies. It was as if the crew and the ship itself had been erased from existence. Wide aerial shot of endless, empty ocean. While the Navy searched the sea, families searched for hope. Mothers waited at windows. Wives clutched telegrams with shaking hands. Children asked when their fathers were coming home. And the Navy had no answer to give them. Soft piano enters quietly. As the weeks turned into months, rumors began to spread. Some whispered that the ship had struck a secret minefield never marked on any map. Others claimed a rogue wave, taller than a skyscraper, had risen from nowhere and crushed the ship in seconds. And then there were those who believed something even darker. That the battleship had encountered something not explained by science. Something powerful enough to erase 25,000 tons of steel without leaving behind a single splinter. Low, unsettling vibration. The government denied everything. The files were sealed. The investigation quietly faded from public view. But the mystery never died. Even today, over 100 years later, naval historians still argue over what truly happened that night. Some point to physics. Some to warfare. Some to classified experiments. And some to forces humanity still does not understand. Slow push into Black Ocean at night. Tonight, we are going to reopen that secret. We are going to retrace the final voyage of this battleship. We will examine the official story. And then we will expose the evidence that doesn't match. You will hear about compass failures that should not have happened. Magnetic disturbances that scrambled navigation. And a final broken transmission that does not match any known naval distress code. Map zoom-in effect. But first, we must go back to the beginning. Back to the shipyard where this steel giant was born. Back to the world that believed it was unstoppable. Back to the moment when the fate of hundreds of men was quietly sealed, long before the ocean claimed its secret. Because only then can you truly understand how something so powerful could vanish. The world that gave birth to the vanished battleship was a world consumed by fear, ambition, and steel. The early 20th century was not just an age of diplomacy and empires, it was an age of machines, where national power was measured not by words, but by the thickness of armor and the range of cannons. Across the oceans, the great naval powers of the world were locked in a silent competition to build the deadliest fleets ever imagined. Every nation believed that whoever ruled the sea would rule the future. Battleships were no longer just warships. They were political statements, floating empires of steel that projected dominance across continents. And in the middle of this terrifying arms race, one ship rose as a symbol of absolute naval power, the battleship that would one day mysteriously vanish. Construction of the battleship began in secrecy and urgency. The shipyards worked day and night, fueled by the belief that war on the open seas was no longer a distant possibility, it was inevitable. Tens of thousands of tons of steel were forged into its hull. Engineers reinforced every deck, every corridor, and every gun mount to survive the most violent punishment imaginable. Its engines were designed for relentless endurance, capable of driving the massive body of the ship through storms that would tear lesser vessels apart. Inside its armored skin, miles of cables, pipes, and mechanical systems pulse like veins inside a living beast. When the battleship was finally launched into the water for the first time, crowds gathered in silence, staring at a machine so massive that it seemed almost unnatural. This was not just a ship. This was a statement to the world. We are ready for war. The crew selected to serve aboard this battleship represented some of the most highly trained sailors of their generation. Many had already survived brutal conditions at sea. Some had family histories tied to naval service going back decades. For them, assignment to this battleship was both an honor and a heavy burden. They understood that if war broke out, their ship would be sent straight into the heart of danger. Daily life aboard the vessel was strict and disciplined. Training drills were constant: fire drills, flooding drills, combat drills. Gunnery crews practiced loading and firing massive shells with mechanical precision. Engineers monitored pressure systems and engines with obsessive care. Radio operators trained in emergency transmissions, preparing for moments when a single message could decide life or death. The ship functioned like a living organism, every man performing a critical role to keep the whole machine alive. Strategically, the battleship's mission was tied directly to rising global tension. Naval intelligence warned of rival fleets expanding at alarming speed. Secret treaties collapsed. Trade routes became potential battle zones. The sea lanes that once carried commerce now carried fear. This battleship was deployed not only as a weapon, but as a warning. Wherever it sailed, enemy commanders took notice. Its presence alone could alter negotiations, shift patrol routes, and intimidate rival fleets into retreat. It was, in every sense, a floating symbol of dominance. Yet, for all its power, it was still bound to the same rules as every other ship, the mercy of the sea. In the weeks leading up to its final voyage, nothing officially indicated that disaster was approaching. Weather reports showed unstable conditions, but not catastrophic. Patrol schedules were routine. Supply logs were normal. The crew prepared for what they believed was another standard operation: escort duties, patrol sweeps, and strategic positioning. Letters were written home. Jokes were shared on deck. There was no panic. No sense of doom. To the men aboard, the battleship felt invincible. It had survived rough waters before. It had survived mechanical failures. It had passed every stress test the Navy could throw at it. There was no reason to believe this mission would be any different. What makes the Disappearance so disturbing is not only what happened, but what did not happen. There was no recorded battle in the region that night. No enemy fleet reported engagement. No opposing navy ever claimed responsibility. The ship did not send a coded combat signal. It did not call for reinforcements. There were no explosions visible on the horizon. No distant flashes of artillery fire. No survivors picked up by merchant vessels. It simply left the timeline of history without explanation. The sea was calm enough for standard navigation, yet hostile enough to hide a secret that has never returned. Behind the scenes, naval command was thrown into chaos. Losing a battleship was not just a military disaster, it was a psychological one. Battleships were symbols of national pride. Their destruction could shake entire governments. And yet, in this case, there was no destruction to analyze. No wreckage to inspect. No survivors to interrogate. Investigators were left with nothing but empty coordinates on a map and unanswered questions. This absence of evidence became the most terrifying evidence of all. The ocean had not just taken a ship. It had taken certainty itself. As time passed, the Disappearance began to transform from an operational mystery into a cultural and psychological wound. Newspapers speculated wildly. Some blamed secret enemy weapons. Others blamed nature. A few hinted at experimental military technologies that had gone catastrophically wrong. Each theory only deepened public fear. If a battleship could vanish without explanation, what else could disappear? What limits truly existed in a world now ruled by machines and unseen forces? For the families of the crew, the background of the ship's power and prestige only made the loss more painful. They had believed their sons and husbands were serving aboard one of the safest warships in existence. They trusted the Navy's promises of protection and preparedness. Instead, they received silence. No graves to visit. No remains to bury. Only the haunting uncertainty of not knowing how, or even when, their loved ones truly died. In many homes, the war did not end when the missing status was declared. It continued every day in unanswered questions. The background of this battleship is not just the story of a machine. It is the story of human confidence colliding with forces it could not control. It is the story of an era that believed steel could conquer nature, that technology could defeat the unknown, that power could guarantee survival. And it is this belief, this dangerous certainty, that makes the ship's disappearance so devastating. Because when a machine built to dominate the sea simply vanishes, It exposes a truth humanity still struggles to accept. No matter how advanced we become, the ocean remains a kingdom where no nation truly rules. The night began like any other at sea, yet it was anything but ordinary. The Battleship, a massive fortress of steel and firepower, cut through the dark waters with a steady, confident rhythm. Sailors moved along the decks, checking hatches, inspecting guns, and whispering about home. Officers monitored instruments and charts, logging coordinates and maintaining the illusion that the ship's world was predictable and safe. The moon reflected off the waves, casting silver streaks across the massive hull, but the calm was deceptive. Subtle anomalies began to appear. Compasses wavered, radio frequencies crackled with strange interference, and radar picked up fleeting, inexplicable blips that vanished the moment they were observed. At first, the crew dismissed these irregularities as minor mechanical errors or natural quirks of the ocean. But as the night deepened, it became clear that something was wrong. The patterns were too consistent to be coincidence. The instruments themselves seemed to rebel against reason, hinting at a presence that defied logic. By midnight, a tense unease had settled over the vessel. Sailors whispered about the unusual movements of the waves, noting that the Battleship, normally impervious to rough seas, appeared to struggle against an invisible current. Shadows flickered across the deck unnaturally, stretching and shifting with no source. Radio operators reported bursts of static punctuated by indecipherable voices. Officers tried to decode these messages, but the transmissions were fragmented, nonsensical, and unsettling. Even the most disciplined men began to feel a gnawing fear. The engines hummed beneath them, but the vibration carried an unfamiliar resonance, as if the ocean itself had taken hold of the ship. Crew members exchanged nervous glances, some muttering prayers under their breath, others clinging to the cold steel rails for comfort. The Battleship, a symbol of human ingenuity and power, had become a vessel of dread, trapped in a reality that defied understanding. Hours passed. The strange lights on the horizon grew more pronounced, green and red flashes dancing across the water in impossible patterns. Some sailors claimed to see faint, ghostly silhouettes atop the waves, figures that vanished whenever approached. The ship's speed fluctuated unpredictably, engines straining to maintain course as though some invisible force resisted every effort. The hum of machinery, once comforting, now seemed sinister, vibrating through decks and bulkheads. Officers issued strict orders to maintain positions, but whispers of fear spread among the men. Some stared at the horizon for answers that never came, others huddled below deck, hearts pounding as the unknown pressed ever closer. The Battleship's reputation for invincibility, carefully built through years of training and reinforcement, seemed meaningless in the face of the night's strange occurrences. Then, suddenly, the radio fell silent. The last transmissions, brief and fragmented, ended abruptly, leaving only static. Attempts to communicate yielded nothing. Navigational instruments went haywire, compasses spun without reason, charts no longer aligned with reality. The horizon itself seemed to twist and shift in ways that defied logic. Panic, carefully restrained until now, began to ripple beneath the disciplined surface. The men understood, instinctively, that the impossible was unfolding. The Battleship, a machine built to endure and dominate, was now at the mercy of forces beyond comprehension. Each passing minute stretched the tension taut, a suspenseful pause that foreshadowed the catastrophe that would soon define history. As dawn approached, search operations began. Nearby ships were alerted, aircraft deployed, and Naval Command scrambled to locate the missing vessel. Yet nothing was found. No debris, no lifeboats, no oil slick, no floating objects of any kind. The Battleship and its crew had vanished completely, leaving a void that defied explanation. Families waiting for word received only silence, the absence of news as devastating as the disappearance itself. Children, mothers, and wives were left with unanswerable questions, the horror compounded by the sheer scale of the mystery. Hundreds of men, a ship heavier than many buildings, and all its weaponry had disappeared, leaving no trace, no clue, and no explanation. The completeness of the erasure was unprecedented, and the event began to take on a mythic quality, whispered about among sailors and historians alike. Speculation ran rampant. Some argued that a rogue wave, taller than any recorded, had engulfed the ship. Others suggested that secret minefields or experimental weapons might have been responsible. Some posited atmospheric anomalies, magnetic storms, or even forces unknown to science. All theories were terrifying, none provable. Investigators reviewed logbooks, weather reports, and instrument readings, yet nothing reconciled with the absence of the vessel. Even official reports were sanitized, noting loss due to unknown causes, while omitting the extraordinary evidence recorded by the crew before the disappearance. The ocean had consumed the battleship, but in a way that confounded every understanding of physics, engineering, and naval warfare. Eyewitness accounts from surrounding ships in subsequent days added to the mystery. Strange lights, low-frequency vibrations, and inexplicable environmental changes were reported. Instruments failed mysteriously. Sailors felt unease, disorientation, and vertigo, conditions that had no clear explanation. The environment itself seemed altered, a reflection of the event that had erased the battleship. Researchers later concluded that this disappearance was not an isolated incident, but a phenomenon affecting a larger area, one that challenged conventional knowledge of oceanography and maritime science. The vanished ship had left no forensic evidence, but it left a psychological scar, a reminder that even the most advanced machines are vulnerable to the unknown. By morning, the reality had set in. The battleship was gone, its crew lost, and the sea had claimed its secret. Naval historians and officers struggled to rationalize the event. The vessel had entered legend not through combat or heroism, but through the sheer impossibility of its disappearance. Every detail, the garbled transmissions, the strange lights, the instrument anomalies, pointed toward a reality that defied human comprehension. The vanished battleship had become a ghost, a mystery that would haunt naval strategy, history, and imagination for generations to come. Its story was not measured in victories, but in the questions it raised and the fear it inspired, the greatest human creation, swallowed entirely by a force no one could explain, leaving only the enduring silence of the deep. Music swells, slow pan over empty ocean. Camera lingers on horizon. This was not just a loss of a ship, it was the erasure of certainty itself, the reminder that no matter how advanced, humanity can never fully control the ocean. And as we move to the next chapter, we will uncover the shocking twists, the classified evidence, and the revelations that suggest this disappearance may have been far more than an accident. Weeks after the battleship disappeared, official investigations seemed to hit an impenetrable wall. The Navy, despite deploying every available asset, had found no debris, no signs of wreckage, no trace of the crew. Families despaired, while officers quietly recorded anomalies in reports that would never see the light of day. But buried deep in the classified files were details that hinted at a far stranger, far more disturbing truth. The initial belief that the battleship had simply sunk or been destroyed by natural forces began to unravel when analysis of radar logs, weather data, and witness reports revealed inconsistencies too glaring to ignore. Certain coordinates logged before the disappearance didn't match the ship's last known position. Magnetic anomalies had been recorded over hundreds of square miles, affecting instruments across the fleet. Even more chilling were reports from other vessels that had experienced sudden engine failures and navigation errors in the same region shortly after the battleship vanished. These anomalies suggested that whatever had claimed the ship wasn't a simple storm or rogue wave, it was something entirely outside human understanding. Then came the first unexplainable visual evidence. Eyewitness accounts from nearby ships described strange lights beneath the water's surface. Massive shapes, some estimated to be larger than submarines, were seen moving with unnatural speed and precision. Crew members aboard other vessels reported seeing the water shimmer and ripple as if disturbed by something enormous just below the surface, yet sonar readings registered nothing solid. These reports were dismissed by many at first as misinterpretation, optical illusions, or stress-induced hallucinations. Yet the patterns were consistent across independent accounts. Night after night, similar anomalies appeared. Radar operators reported blips appearing in perfect formations, only to vanish instantly. Engineers aboard nearby ships noted low-frequency vibrations, identical in signature to those reported from the vanished battleship. These signals had no identifiable source. Whatever had taken the ship had left behind a signature, a trace of something intelligent, or at least forceful enough to manipulate steel and machinery at will. The twist that sent shockwaves through naval intelligence came when a set of decrypted communications surfaced years later. Initially classified, these transmissions suggested that the battleship's disappearance might not have been entirely accidental. Logs indicated that the crew had attempted emergency maneuvers before the final transmission, sudden course changes, and rapid engine adjustments. Yet these maneuvers did not match known ocean currents, storms, or mechanical failure. Analysis suggested that someone or something had anticipated every move, effectively neutralizing the ship's defensive systems. The implication was terrifying. The battleship hadn't simply succumbed to nature. Something had actively interfered, a force capable of countering one of the most heavily armed and advanced warships ever constructed. Some theorists suggested the possibility of secret experimental technology, perhaps even weaponized underwater vehicles or unmapped phenomena, while others whispered darker, less rational possibilities. An intelligence lurking beneath the ocean that humanity had never encountered. Even more disturbing were survivor fragments. While no crew had officially been recovered, confidential interviews with sailors from nearby ships reported strange auditory phenomena. Radio operators recounted hearing faint, distorted voices pleading for help, repeating navigational coordinates or cryptic warnings. Some claimed to have heard mechanical clanging and the sound of massive hulls moving underwater, entirely inconsistent with recorded events. Engineers reported instruments behaving as if being physically manipulated from outside the vessel, gauges swinging wildly despite no internal input. These reports, consistent across multiple sources, painted a picture not of a ship destroyed by accident, but of a ship intercepted, overwhelmed, and swallowed in a way that defied every known principle of naval warfare. The battleship's final hours were not lost, they had been deliberately erased, or hidden by forces humanity could not yet comprehend. Another revelation came from maritime archaeology decades later. Deep-sea scans in the region of the Disappearance detected irregularities on the ocean floor. Shapes appeared and disappeared in sonar imagery, some resembling the outline of a ship, yet distorted beyond recognition. Thermal readings indicated the presence of massive metallic masses shifting below the seabed, though no wreckage was ever recovered. These findings sparked heated debates among experts. Were these anomalies natural formations? Could they be remnants of the battleship, warped and concealed by the ocean? Or were they evidence of something far more deliberate, an engineered concealment, a manipulation of natural elements designed to hide the ship from detection? Whatever the explanation, the twist was undeniable. The ocean itself seemed complicit, holding secrets that resisted every attempt at understanding. The human element of this twist was equally haunting. Naval officers tasked with search and recovery experienced inexplicable psychological effects, nausea, disorientation, vivid nightmares, and an unshakable sense of being watched. Some reported hearing ghostly echoes of the vanished battleship's final moments in the hum of their own ship's engines. These phenomena were dismissed by some as stress-related, but the consistency of reports suggested otherwise. There was a collective memory, almost a residue, of the battleship's disappearance embedded in the minds of those who sailed nearby. Even decades later, sailors recount these stories with a sense of reverence and fear, acknowledging that something occurred that science and logic could not fully explain. The final, most disturbing revelation was uncovered in recently declassified naval intelligence documents. Analysts noted that the last known transmission from the battleship did not align with standard distress codes. Instead, it appeared to be a garbled signal intended to convey specific data, perhaps an attempt to warn others. Yet the meaning of the message remained indecipherable. Attempts to reconstruct the communication revealed patterns that some cryptographers described as resembling encoded coordinates, but where they led, no one could determine. This suggested the ship's crew may have encountered something intentional, strategic, and controlled. The battleship had not merely been lost to the sea, it had been targeted by forces capable of overriding human control, intelligence, and anticipation. The implications were staggering. A vessel of unmatched firepower neutralized not by combat, not by weather, but by an unknown intelligence, a force whose capabilities far exceeded human understanding. The twist of this story forces a chilling conclusion. The battleship's disappearance was not random. It was calculated, deliberate, and enigmatic. The anomalies, the instrument's behavior, the strange lights, the garbled transmissions, and even the psychological effects on nearby sailors all converged to suggest a presence beyond comprehension. A force that could manipulate the ocean and technology at will. This was not an accident. This was not nature alone. Something or someone had ensured that the battleship would vanish without trace, leaving behind an enduring mystery that challenges every assumption about human power, naval engineering. The vanished battleship, now decades past its disappearance, had entered legend, yet its mystery refused to fade. Scholars, sailors, and military analysts alike have pored over every fragment of evidence, yet each revelation only deepens the enigma. What makes this story unforgettable and terrifying is not the ship's construction, nor its firepower, but the utter completeness of its disappearance. Entire crews, hundreds of men, a vessel that dwarfed skyscrapers in both weight and engineering complexity, vanished as if swallowed by the ocean itself. Families never received closure. Navies never recovered debris. Instruments, logs, and transmissions were fragmented, distorted, and inconclusive. In the absence of answers, theories multiplied, each more chilling than the last. Some suggested natural anomalies of a scale previously unimagined. Others whispered of experimental technologies, top-secret operations, or forces beyond comprehension, capable of neutralizing steel, human will, and gravity itself. The true horror lay in the idea that the ocean, vast and indifferent, could harbor secrets so profound that even the most powerful human creations were powerless before them. Even in recent years, sonar scans of the area reveal anomalies that resist explanation. Massive, irregular shapes move beneath the seabed, appearing and disappearing without pattern. Thermal readings detect metallic heat signatures, but nothing solid is ever recovered. Deep-sea drones capture fleeting images, shadows of structures twisted and distorted as if warped by pressure, yet none match the known design of the battleship. The ocean itself seems complicit, a shifting labyrinth that hides truths from prying eyes. Analysts note correlations between these anomalies and the original disappearance coordinates, suggesting that the battleship did not sink at random, but was consumed, transported, or concealed by forces beyond known physics. For naval strategists, the disappearance remains a case study in unpredictability. How can a battleship, designed to survive bombardments and storms, be neutralized without a trace? How can a crew vanish in waters already under surveillance? Each analysis reinforces the same haunting truth. The event defies conventional logic. Exercises in naval tactics, emergency preparedness, and disaster recovery have all used this incident as a cautionary tale. It is the ultimate unknown, the nightmare scenario for commanders and engineers alike. The vanished battleship has transcended its status as a historical vessel. It is now a symbol of the limits of human power, technology, and foresight. Yet, perhaps the most unsettling aspect lies in what was never discovered. While some evidence hints at interference, unexplained vibrations, mysterious lights, anomalous radar readings, nothing concrete explains how or why the battleship disappeared. Theories range from plausible to fantastical: experimental weapons gone awry, secret enemy technologies, underwater phenomena not yet understood, or even extraterrestrial involvement. Each theory carries implications that are as terrifying as the last, suggesting that humanity may have underestimated the power of the deep sea. The ocean, vast and unexplored, has always been humanity's frontier, but the vanished battleship proves that it is a frontier capable of hiding secrets that challenge everything we know about reality. For naval strategists, the Disappearance remains a case study in unpredictability. How can a battleship, designed to survive bombardments and storms, be neutralized without a trace? How can a crew vanish in waters already under surveillance? Each analysis reinforces the same haunting truth: the event defies conventional logic. Exercises in naval tactics, emergency preparedness, and disaster recovery have all used this incident as a cautionary tale. It is the ultimate unknown, the nightmare scenario for commanders and engineers alike. The vanished battleship has transcended its status as a historical vessel. It is now a symbol of the limits of human power, technology, and foresight. Yet, perhaps the most unsettling aspect lies in what was never discovered. While some evidence hints at interference, unexplained vibrations, mysterious lights, anomalous radar readings, nothing concrete explains how or why the battleship disappeared. Theories range from plausible to fantastical: experimental weapons gone awry, secret enemy technologies, underwater phenomena not yet understood, or even extraterrestrial involvement. Each theory carries implications that are as terrifying as the last, suggesting that humanity may have underestimated the power of the deep sea. The ocean, vast and unexplored, has always been humanity's frontier, but the vanished battleship proves that it is a frontier capable of hiding secrets that challenge everything we know about reality. In the final analysis, the battleship's disappearance is not merely a story of loss, it is a reminder. A reminder that even the mightiest constructions, the most disciplined crews, and the most advanced technology are still vulnerable to the unknown. The ocean, with its infinite depth, pressure, and mystery, remains a force beyond control, a kingdom where human ambition and steel are irrelevant. And the vanished battleship, whether destroyed, hidden, or transported into some unknowable domain, serves as an enduring symbol of this truth. Its legend has grown over decades, fueled by reports, studies, sonar anomalies, and ghostly tales. It is a story that captivates, terrifies, and refuses to be forgotten, a story that asks more questions than it answers, and a story that remains unfinished. As the waves crash endlessly on the empty horizon, the world can only speculate. What truly happened to the battleship that mysteriously vanished? Did it succumb to forces of nature beyond comprehension? Was it intercepted by technology unknown even today? Or does it linger in some hidden realm, a steel leviathan swallowed by the abyss? Every sonar ping, every anomalous reading, every unexplained whisper across the sea serves as a reminder that the ocean still holds secrets we are not ready to face. And perhaps, somewhere in the deep, the battleship remains, waiting, unseen, untouched, a ghost of human ambition swallowed by the infinite. Camera slowly pans over endless ocean, mist rising. Orchestral music swells and fades. The vanished battleship is gone, yet it is never truly gone. Its story continues to haunt historians, sailors, and the curious alike, leaving us with a final, chilling truth: some mysteries are eternal. And the ocean, indifferent and infinite, keeps its secrets hidden, waiting for the day when someone might uncover the impossible.